Whenever we use the term Fanged Wyvern to describe a certain monster, many people will start to think along the lines of, let's say, the Odogaron, or the Tobikitachi, or maybe even the Great Jagras. However, when it comes to Fanged Wyverns, for veteran hunters out there, there's only one true Fanged Wyvern to ever be discovered back in the old world, and they know for a fact that this creature is super important, that they wanted to make sure that Capcom delivered it within Monster Hunter World Iceborne. This is none other than the infamous Thunderwolf Wyvern, that is the Zinogre. This creature has been a powerhouse of a Fanged Wyvern to only ever be discovered back in the old world, and in the new world, we now see this creature as one of the apex predators to roam around this new region that has recently been discovered. What we're going to be looking into here today is how a Zinogre life starts from the moment of its birth all the way up to the moment of its eventual passing. Let's go ahead and take a look. Hey everyone, Pinoy X here once again, back with another Monster Hunter video, and today we are going to be exploring the life of one of the most infamous Fanged Wyverns out there to ever be discovered between the old and the new world. That is none other than Zinogre. This creature has had a lot of importance in the Monster Hunter series, being the original Fanged Wyvern and the flagship monster of Monster Hunter Portable 3rd, and we're going to be exploring how this young little creature from the moment of its birth becomes the powerhouse apex predator that we start to hunt down in both the old and the new world, just to get a better understanding of the life cycle of a Zinogre from the moment of its birth all the way up to the moment of its eventual passing. We are also going to be exploring how certain variations of the monster are created when it comes to the ecological factors that this monster goes through throughout its entire life cycle. So let's go ahead and take a look at the very first part of this creature's life, and that is the moment of its birth as well as its young childhood. For the most part of a Zinogre's life, these creatures generally tend to live their life in solitude, mostly because of the fact that they are so powerful, they don't need the help of other Zinogres in order to take down their prey. They can pretty much do it on their own. One of the key things that we know about these creatures, however, is that they will want to continue their bloodline, and this is where a young Zinogre is born. Now, there are no records of Zinogres mating because for the most part these creatures live in solitude, but there are records of young Zinogres being born into the world of Monster Hunter, hence the reason why we actually have a certain example of how a young Zinogre looks in comparison to that of an adult Zinogre. Now, many people will notice that a Zinogre has quite a thick fur, but if you take a look at the younger version, the fur is much thicker in comparison to the adult version, and this is mostly because of the fact that the fur actually helps expedite the storage of electricity, making it easier for a young Zinogre to store up electrical current in their body in order to get used to it. At a very young age, most Zinogres are under the protection of their parents, but there are going to be two key abilities that they will need to learn in order to make sure that they can protect themselves out there in the wild, and they can also hunt and feed themselves as grown adults. These two abilities are none other than storing electricity and learning to symbiotically bond with thunderbugs. The ability to store energy inside their body plus bonding with thunderbugs are two of the most common abilities of any Zinogre out there, whether young or old, because Zinogres actually can't generate their own lightning unless they have the external source for it, which are the thunderbugs. However, when it comes to a young Zinogre, they will need to stick to their natural limits when it comes to storing electrical energy inside their body. This is mostly because of the fact that there's one body part of a young Zinogre that's completely underdeveloped in comparison to the adult version, which are the spikes running across its body. The spikes actually act as a form of ventilation system, and because of how underdeveloped they are for a young Zinogre, if this creature attempts to go into supercharged state, it could actually kill the young Zinogre. So most of these creatures will avoid trying to go through the supercharged state unless those spikes have developed well enough in order for them to ventilate that excess energy. As a young Zinogre continues its life in learning to store electrical current inside its body, it is also learning to bond with thunderbugs that it may come across. Having said this, however, for a bond between the Zinogre and thunderbugs to really happen properly, a thunderbug needs to see the Zinogre as a form of guardian, and the best way for Zinogres to do this is by preying upon the natural predators of the thunderbugs, which are the Garguas. The Zinogre eats the Gargua, Thunderbug becomes grateful and starts electrifying the Zinogre, giving it that electrical energy. That's pretty much the natural bond between Zinogre as well as Thunderbugs back in the old world, but in the new world it's slightly different. We're not quite sure if there's a natural predator for Thunderbugs in the new world, however they do still see the Zinogre as a form of guardian and do start to gather around it. So whatever the case may be, the Zinogres will always be seen as a guardian by the Thunderbugs, whether that be back in the old world or in the new world. Now, as the young Zinogre continuously learns and improves upon storing electrical energy inside of its body, as well as bonding with the Thunderbugs around it, their bodies are developing as well as they grow up. Eventually, there will come a point where the spikes of a young Zinogre are developed enough so that this creature can actually use it to vent out the excess energy that it stores inside of its body. At this point, the young Zinogre can now learn to go through the supercharged state. The supercharged state is not just about generating electricity on the monster's body, but also galvanizing its body in order to improve its overall power output and of course, utilizing lightning as a means of projectiles. So this is very important for a young Zinogre to learn because it is gonna be their main weapon of choice as they grow up. Eventually that energy will go away and dissipate because as we can see with most Zinogres, they don't actually keep that energy stored inside their body for a very long time, but it does mean that if they are in a situation where they might need that energy again, they can just call up on the Thunderbugs, store it inside their body, and go through the supercharged state as we have seen with the adult Zinogres. So this is pretty much the life cycle of a young Zinogre. It's all about learning their capabilities and making sure they know how to access it without damaging themselves or even accidentally killing themselves. Being labeled as one of the apex predators between the old and the new world means that the adult Zinogre's life is all about combat and making sure it stands out on top as one of the true alphas in the regions in which it lives in. Perhaps the biggest change between the young and the adult version of a Zinogre is none other than its behavior when it comes to aggression. Adult Zinogres are far more aggressive than the younger versions, and this is mostly to do with the fact that they have to fend for themselves after foregoing the protection of their parent, meaning that they now have to do everything by themselves, including attacking other monsters to gain territory and of course hunting down certain creatures for sustenance. So the aggression of a Zinogre is actually quite warranted at this point because it now has to do everything on its own. Having said this, however, despite these creatures being quite aggressive, it doesn't necessarily mean that they will attack a monster straight away. There is gonna be that part of the Zinogre where they're actually quite observant of other creatures around them. As we can see on some of the scenarios in which the Zinogre will fight other creatures, they usually observe what's happening around them before they start striking down other monsters or even hunters. We can see this during the combat between the Zinogre and the Mizutsune, in which the Zinogre was potentially gauging the Mizutsune's capabilities and keeping its distance against this monster before pouncing towards the Mizutsune to start the fight. Same thing happens in the new world in which a Zinogre was actually observing the combat that's happening between a Rathalos and a Diablos before joining in the fray. So these creatures are quite observant of what's happening around them, even though they are quite aggressive. Observing the electrical properties and combat capabilities of a Zinogre during their adult stages, we can pretty much say that at this point, they have mastered everything they need to know about electricity, controlling it, and of course, their bond with the Thunderbugs, meaning that these creatures can go through the supercharged state without any ill effects in any way, shape, or form. Not only that, because these creatures are so physical in the way they fight, rather than simply using these electrical properties as a means of projectile, the supercharged state actually galvanizes the body of the monster to the point that their power output is well beyond what a normal Zinogre would be able to do without supercharging their body. So their physical attributes have now increased quite exponentially when they become supercharged during their adult stages. Having said all of this, however, a Zinogre is not capable of maintaining that electricity if they take too much damage. It will disperse the thunderbugs inside their body, and they will need to call upon even more thunderbugs eventually in order to supercharge themselves once again. So they do need to keep an eye on the damage that they are receiving because it can disperse the electricity within their bodies. Much of a Zinogre's life usually revolves around combat, whether that be fighting hunters or fighting other monsters, and for the most part these creatures do stand out as one of the more powerful monsters out there. However, much of a Zinogre's life also revolves around trying to become stronger, and there are certain anomalies that could actually affect a Zinogre's overall power output in comparison to that of a regular monster that might not experience these anomalies. The most common anomaly that could be experienced back in the old world was none other than the Frenzy virus. Many creatures were infected by the Frenzy virus, however the Zinogre, being an apex predator, was actually capable of utilizing the Frenzy virus, thus allowing it to enter what is known as the apex state. Very fitting for this particular creature. It allowed the Zinogre to not only bolster up its overall capabilities altogether, it allowed the creature to utilize the Frenzy virus as well. However, in the new world, the Zinogre is not influenced by the Frenzy virus but rather something altogether different. This is none other than the bioenergy of many different elder dragons, thus powering up the creature, allowing it to enter what is known as the tempered state. A tempered Zinogre is vastly more powerful than that of the regular creature, allowing them to keep themselves galvanized with electricity by keeping their supercharged state for longer and enduring even more damage before they get knocked out of their supercharged state. So these creatures are so powerful that they take a lot more damage in comparison to the regular monster, and they can keep themselves supercharged for longer, allowing them to utilize their electrical properties much more effectively. One way or another, as we can see right here, a Zinogre will take on these anomalies in its body in order to adapt to itself and then become even stronger. Now at this point, we may see a Zinogre pass away due to one of three reasons: either being slain by a hunter, slain by other monsters, or simply natural causes such as old age or illness. However, having said all of this, there are gonna be some Zinogres out there that would generally tend to avoid contact with other creatures in order to raise their young. Some of these Zinogres might actually take on a unique form of thunderbug that has the elemental properties of dragon, known as Dracopage bugs. If the parent Zinogre has taken on Dracopage bugs inside their body, this could actually alter the genetics of the newborn child, thus giving birth to none other than the subspecies known as the Stygian Zinogre. Stygian Zinogres have the elemental properties of dragon, but they can still generate lightning, much like that of a regular Zinogre, when they start taking in the energy of a Dracopage bug rather than the regular thunderbugs. Stygian Zinogres are a little bit more aggressive than that of the regular monster, and they are far more creative when it comes to using their lightning capabilities when they become supercharged. Alongside this, they also take on new athletic moves that are never seen before from the regular monster. So this is how a subspecies is born when it comes to the subspecies of a Zinogre. Back in the old world, the Hunters Guild has also discovered a unique kind of Zinogre separate from that of the subspecies that has taken on unique mutations across its body, allowing it to store even more lightning across its body, being able to supercharge beyond what the regular monster is capable of. Now, in order to hunt down this creature, you will need a special permit from the Hunters Guild because this monster is so dangerous that it's been labeled as a deviant of a Zinogre, being named as the Thunderlord Zinogre. Now overall, based on what we have observed about the Zinogre as of this point, we can pretty much say that the Zinogre's life is all about mastering its innate capabilities at a young age and showing their masteries of their innate capabilities when they become adults. They will fight both monsters and hunters alike in order to put themselves on top of the food chain as one of the most powerful apex predators out there, and alongside this, you can pretty much compare a Zinogre to that of a modern day wolf because even though they don't form packs with other Zinogres out there, They kind of form a sort of pseudo-pack with the thunderbugs that gather around their body, with the Zinogre acting as both guardian and alpha, commanding these thunderbugs to do whatever it needs to do when it comes to lightning capabilities. All in all, the Zinogre earns its title as a Thunderwolf Wyvern when it comes to the Monster Hunter series. And that is pretty much it for this video, observing the life of a Zinogre from the moment of its birth all the way up to the moment of its passing and everything else that we need to know in between. What do you think about this Fanged Wyvern altogether within Monster Hunter World Iceborne and even previous Monster Hunter games? Let me know in the comments below what you think about Zinogre altogether, and also let us know in the comments below if you've done your own research regarding this monster and have found interesting facts that I've not yet mentioned within this particular video. With all of that being said, if you enjoyed these videos, please consider leaving a like on the video itself and subscribing to the channel, as well as hitting that bell icon so you can go ahead and catch up on any future Monster Hunter content that I might be doing or any other games that I might be playing in future. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks ever so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Onward and upward.